everyone, this is week 2, our first online module for this course. We are going to go over the learning orientations, the testing considerations and procedures, do a little bit about Brigance, the special education interview, and then the assessment report expectations. Actually, we're beginning with the assessment report expectations, and hopefully you've already watched the video on that, which is also right here. And then I will be going over the review of Activity 1, but that won't be till Thursday at the soonest, and I may even wait for the next class. This is the Testing Considerations and Procedures video that you're watching right now. And just to kind of go through that, so the first thing, let me just make this big, that we're going to be doing is the Chapius Learning Orientations, talk about the 3-tiered model of support, and cultural considerations, ethics, do some work on the Brigance, and then talk about the assessment report and Activity 2 and what's next. One of the things I like to keep in mind is that stress actually isn't a bad thing as long as it's in the right amount. So if you've got too much, then that could cause a meltdown. Too little could be boredom or depression, but just the right amount is actually where you get the optimal performance. So it's always just good to keep that in mind as you're moving through the semester. This is Activity 2, so we start out with 2 questions from the Chapius article. Then there's the one on the 3-tiered model of intervention, being ethical and administration, the Brigance, talking about the assessment report, the feedback for this week, which is how are you feeling about assessing a student using the Brigance assessment, and then your big assignment for this week is interviewing a professional about assessment. And just to ward off any fears, I have contacts for you. You just need to let me know if you need that, okay? So here we go. We've got the learning goal orientation, and this is the Chapius article that I have attached. You can see it is only, 4 pages long, and it basically goes over the 3 orientations of learning. So one, if the aim of your work is to get better, that's called the learning orientation. 2, if it's performance or ego, to like prove your ability or hide a perceived lack of ability, then that's the performance or ego orientation. And the 3rd one is the task completion orientation. You just want to get it done and get a grade so you can move on. In this article, it goes through and it describes each one of those. And so I want you to answer the 2 questions, which one you identify most with this course and why. So you'll need to define the orientation and then give me examples from your own life on what you bring to this course. And then I also want you to think about it with your students. You know, which orientation do you want your students to have and why? So you'll have to explain that orientation as well and then give examples. Next is, I just wanted to go over a little bit about executive functions, that we want to not just have our students remembering and recalling information, but we actually want them to understand, apply, create, evaluate, and analyze. This is all part of our job because we're supposed to be meeting 21st century skills. We're supposed to be giving opportunities for critical thinking. It uses the brain function for many of our students, and then also the idea of research, so input, process, connect, and share, which is output. So how do we demonstrate our knowledge? The depth of knowledge, just so you know, I'm going to go back to the module. And you can see here at the bottom, I've actually added, here's the Chapius article, here's the Webb's depth of knowledge chart, because I do realize that this one is very small on this PowerPoint. So you can look at it bigger and also have that near you as you do planning for your classes. I think it's just a really helpful tool. Let's just keep going on. And then I wanted to introduce you to Fink's Taxonomy of Significant Learning. The 2 pieces that I really enjoy about this model for significant learning is the care part and the human dimension. That we're not just giving information to a computer, we're giving an information to a human being. And so how can we help them so that they're able to absorb and learn from that? So here we go. In the book, chapter 1, they have a section on the 3-tiered model of school supports. Sometimes it's called RTI, sometimes it's called MTSS. And the big pieces of that are that as a team, you identify a problem. So, a student might be struggling academically or behaviorally, and you demonstrate this using data. Then, as a team, you come up with some strategies that or interventions that you can use, and how you'll collect the data to figure out if those strategies and interventions are working. So, for example, with English language learners, one strategy might be a longer wait time after you ask a question in class. And then you would need some sort of way to figure out if you actually gave the wait time with fidelity. And then also, is it working? So then the group would reconvene to assess the progress. So if there's progress, you just keep it up, and hopefully the student will get to where they need to be. If there's only some progress, maybe you make some adjustments to the plan. If there's no progress at all, first you have to figure out, was the plan administered with fidelity? And then if it was and there was still no progress, then it could be another plan, or it could be possibly a referral for special education. The other thing is that it's the academic, and then there also are behavioral. The big idea here with this triangle is that 80 to 90% of students actually should be able to be helped by their general ed teacher in the classroom without any sort of disruption to their learning. And so that's just by changing some of the strategies that the teacher and the school support staff have been doing in the classroom. 5 to 10% of students are on what are called Tier 2 supports. And that might be kind of pulling them out for a small group or one-on-one help. And then the last tier is only 1 to 5% of students actually need to have real intense individualized focus to give them the support that they need to be successful. For steps in test administration prep, we mentioned before, I mentioned last week, of course, rereading the test manual, instructions, prompt and scoring rules, just like we did with the RAT, where there was a lot going on there. So to really review that and make sure that you're comfortable with, what pages to start on and everything else. Practice the administration prior to the test. IDEA actually requires test administration. That you use that manner set forth by the test developer that you were trained on, and that only people who have been trained on administering assessments actually give the assessment. Last week, I also mentioned setting the tone, so creating a safe environment, checking in with the student, explaining the test, like what, why, and how, and of course, the language you use will be different depending on the student's ability. Have all the test materials set up and ready prior to the test. And I mentioned I like the clipboard and having that ready to take lots of notes before, during, and after a test. And the notes should be on academic, behavioral, and any outside distractions. So the student's strengths you would want to make sure to mention, the areas of growth, and then here's some examples of things that I may have written down on a test protocol in the past. So just noted when decoding, pronouncing the first sound correctly, however, mispronouncing the rest of the words, such as in the word shirt instead of shave and bike instead of boat. Or RJ was relaxed and compliant at the beginning of the test. She came into the room and sat down with a smile, and she said she was excited to show me how much she had improved over the last year. So some of these are qualitative, some of these are quantitative observations that I've made. Next is the cultural considerations. Students are often misdiagnosed or over-evaluated or over-identified for special education. There's a lot about this in your book, your textbook, so please make sure to read that chapter 1 and you'll see some of these things. But I'm just pointing out a few of them, just the fact that cultural or ethnic background can affect your diagnosis in special ed. So especially for African American boys who are oftentimes categorized as having a severe emotional disturbance, whereas white or Asian students often are categorized as having autism spectrum disorder. Next, that poverty, being a single parent, lack of resources, or any sort of learned behavior can also have an effect on students being over-identified. And that a clinical judgment, that means, whatever the assessment results have using only that to determine placement instead of looking more holistically at, course observations, comparing it to work samples, interviewing teachers and family and student, that oftentimes makes it so that students are misdiagnosed, overevaluated, or over-identified. So these are all things that you can do as a teacher. So one is you can create multiple forms of assessment, so formal and informal assessment. Consider the language needs of the student as you're assessing them. Respect any cultural differences. Learn from the families. Ask the families what they want, and administer the assessments with fidelity. And also use the response to intervention strategies and interventions, and promote language acquisition in all classes. So I'm going to end this little portion of the video, and then you'll have one more video to watch, just giving us a little bit of a brain break. I know I just did a lot of talking, and I also gave you the information on what where you would find the answers to your activity 2 in the book and things like that, and readings. And now I want you to just take a moment. And this is just a little handout on how to start meditating. So one is to breathe. Don't try to calm your mind. Instead, appreciate the sensations of your breath in the same way that a wine snob tastes a Cabernet. So I like that one. The other one is have your hands and arms relax. Relax your shoulders. Make sure that your legs and feet and knees are below your hips, and you're kind of letting go of the stress. Emotions, so really making sure that you kind of leave your emotions at bay, and maybe just kind of sit with them for a moment. Having your eyes closed is actually helpful because it kind of tells your body to just turn off for a minute. And then even having a timer, it can be helpful, but even if you only got 10 seconds or 5 minutes, it really is a great way to kind of decompress and move forward. So I recommend you take a 5-minute timer and just do some breathing and relaxing and taking care of yourself now.